Hello, I was getting ready to do this little video and kind of going through my mind what I was going to start off with. And the thought, the thoughts, the words came to say a few years ago, such and such. And then I began to think about what I was saying a few years ago. It wasn't a few years ago, it was a long time ago. Uh, Trying to think about the how long it was, maybe 40 years ago. Well, I guess it would have been about 30 years ago. I had some things start to happen to me that were really fearful to me. And I found out that there wasn't really seemingly any place to turn where anybody would understand what was happening there. So kind of worked through things on my own. But I can't say on my own totally. Or I know I had some help, and that help was not human, but the Lord watched over me in it. Didn't make anything go away, didn't make it all disappear. It was a struggle. But yet, in that struggle, I learned some things. Let me talk to you about what it was that I went through. Things were going pretty well. I had actually quit working my secular job and went full time into church work. The church was doing well. We were seeing people come in, and it was really a pretty good time. But in that period of apparent success, I began to get a little bit this, I don't know what word, I want to say disoriented. My mind began to think like I hadn't really thought before. And so I remember driving across the bridge in town and looked up the creek that the bridge crossed, and I saw, at least I think I saw, a couple people down on the sandbar next to the water. And as I remember, one of them was carrying the other, and even as I think about this, I'm going, was my mind playing tricks on me at that point? I can't for sure tell. But the one that was carrying the other was dressed in one of those black cloaks. I don't want to say cape, but and something just fearful kind of struck me, and I began to have this spirit of fear about me. And I won't go into all the details. There were many. I can't even remember all of them really, but a spirit of fearfulness came, and I began to sink into that over a period of a few weeks, to the point that I began to think about my own health and my own mortality. I really wondered if maybe my heart was not good, and maybe I was dying. And those thoughts began to kind of plague my mind. And it really got to a point where in that mode of thinking, I began to get uncontrolled bouts of fear. I didn't know what a panic attack was. I never, that I know of, even heard of one, but I was having them. Um, just terrible, terrible senses of um, fear that I couldn't shut down, and they would come and last for, and at this point I can't remember how long they might last, but maybe half an hour or maybe less. But at some points they would become very intense. I remember one of the things that I had in my mind is, if now being in Colorado and you travel in the state, you're going to have to cross some mountain passes, and some of those passes have some elevations that are up there a little bit, around 10, 11,000 feet sometimes. But in my mind, I was thinking there's not enough oxygen on the top. I'm laughing now, but it wasn't funny then. There's not enough oxygen on the top of those passes, and my heart's going to give out on me. And I began to really be fixated on my heart and whether I was going to make it or not. And so whenever I would have to travel, and we were doing work in the church as a state youth leader, and so there was a lot of trips required to go to Denver most of the time, sometimes Colorado Springs, but I'd have to get over those passes, and every time I'd start up one, I began to feel that fear and that panic beginning to set in, and I would crack the windows down to let air in, and just trying to wait to get to the top so we could start back down again. And very, very terrible feelings that would come. And again, I'm not going to describe, you may think I'm going to continue with this, but if anybody has ever had one of those, you'd understand. I think it's pretty much what I'm talking about. And you just feel out of control. You feel like your life has just gone crazy. I would remember going to sleep, and then in just a few moments I would wake up and I would be in a state of panic. So sleep was not there for me. Fear, I would be unable to really leave even the house. I felt safe at home somewhat. But none of it, this is the big thing here, none of it made any sense. None of it really was something that I could pinpoint and figure out. And so I struggled with that for a number of months. Um, and at a point in time, I remember walking across by a bookshelf I had. There was one there in the hallway on the second floor of the house, and it seemed as though one particular book stuck out, and so I reached for it and pulled it off the shelf. I don't remember if I read it or even began to read it right away, but after a while I did, and maybe it was some days later. I began to read through it, and as I did, I began to see the book laying out a description of what was happening to me. And of course, at that point, I got a little bit interested in it. And indeed, I read the whole thing, and it was very helpful. I'll just kind of jump forward a little bit here and say that after these things began to dissipate, which took a number of months, probably from the time I started into the I'll call it depression that brought on the attacks, to the time I began to feel like I was getting just literally my mind back. It was at least 9 months. And in fact, for a number of years, I was really aware that I had not totally gotten rid of it, but that it was under control, and that as time went on, it was getting better and better all the time. And I don't know. I look at it now, and it's 30 years later. I don't know that I could say it's totally gone, um, but it is totally under control. And I learned a lot from that. And I, of course, when you go through something, you get aware of the thing. And it seemed like the Lord would bring people across my path that were struggling with the same thing. Inevitably, they described it as something they did not understand. They felt like they were all alone, and these are common. These are the way I felt, or these things are the way I felt, that nobody understood, and that there was never going to be an end to it. And so when somebody would confide in me, and relate those feelings and things, um, I I knew that the Lord had allowed me to go through that to help other people through it. Um, and just as the book helped me, then I was in place to help other people. Um, it's and I have to think back, because again, it was 30 years ago. Um, but it's a sense of being totally out of control. It's a sense that you are in danger of your life. It's a sense that literally you are crazy, and so that people would begin to describe their symptoms, and oftentimes when they start to do that, I would stop and say, "Let me tell you what you're feeling," and I would tell them out of my experience what it was that they were going through, and they would be sitting there shaking their head. Yeah, that's it. Just to just as the first point that's so important is that if you're going through something like this, if you are having panic attacks, understand that you are not alone. I'm laughing because you are really not alone. There are many people that struggle with these things. I'm glad that the Lord allowed me to get through it without medication. It was probably a more difficult struggle because of that, but by having my mind clear while I was going through it, not affected by any sedatives or drugs or anything, I think I had a better understanding of what was taking place when I began to finally uh, see what it was. And like I said, the first glimmer of hope that I had was that I'm not alone, that other people go through this, and that there are people who, because they've gone through it, understand what it is, why it happens. And that's point number two. You're not crazy. You're, well, probably not crazy, maybe. Uh, but you're not crazy because of panic attacks. There are reasons for them. And when you understand those reasons, you begin to be able to put together, um, I could say maybe a plan to to learn to cope with it, and the reasons that they happen are really uh, interesting, because they are revealing to yourself, as you analyze it and go through it, who you are, what you're made up of, why your fears are there in the first place, and how to deal with them. And maybe really important is that deep on the inside of us psychologically, I guess psychologically is the word I'm looking for. Um, we have deep seated needs that are in our subconscious, and those needs really are driving factors in our lives. And when we understand what those needs are, we begin to be able to see why we go through and why we feel some of the things that we feel, and why we get into that point where we don't feel like we're in control at all. Um, and I know I may be jumping around a little bit, but I know that a lot of sports figures deal with this and have actually had to give up their lucrative contracts for these sports teams that they're part of, because these panic attacks are so debilitating that that's the only answer that they could come to, is to just to back off and to quit. Um, so, and I don't have any notes. I don't have anything prepared here. All I'm doing is just going back in my mind and just recalling things, and that's what this video is about. Just to kind of talk to you if you're going through something like that. Number one, you're not alone. Number two, you're in good company. Some of the best athletes, and not only athletes, but anybody, a lot of people that are in prominent positions. But that doesn't mean you have to be in a prominent position to have them. It just depends on the factors in your life that are there to basically put pressure on you. And depending on how I go about these videos, I'll relate some of the things that were going on in my life. Not bad things. In fact, they were good things. And that things didn't make sense. I could understand depression and, you know, going through some stuff if everything was bad. But instead, everything was going really, in my mind, really good. And then it starts to happen. One thing that probably helped me to identify in the book with what was being said as much as anything. No, again, I keep saying, number one, I'm not alone. I mean, I can't overstress that fact that you're not alone. That was just so comforting to me, that I'm not the only one going through this. And then one other thing that really, and I'll probably just kind of stop here and we'll pick up where we left later on. But just want to throw this out to you so that you can, I guess it's kind of like a lifeline. If you're going through this, you can know that there is hope and that you will get through this. And anyway, the other thing that I started to mention was that there are certain things that we, in our subconscious, put into our thinking that become triggers for these panic attacks. Now, I've already kind of told you what that trigger was. And if you remember my story so far, you knew that when I crossed over the mountains, then I would begin to struggle, and they would oftentimes come on me full force in those things. Of course, I'm driving a car, and maybe sometimes I had to pull over, but I didn't want to pull over because I really wanted to get up to the top, and back down so I can get some air to breathe, which all didn't make any sense at all. There's no danger at all, really. So anyway, there were triggers, and as I was reading through the book, the example that was given as to one of the triggers is that the person was afraid to cross a bridge. And I go, well, that's a lot like not wanting to cross the mountain. And so I really identified with that and understood that, okay, there's a lot of similarities here. I'm going to get through this. I'm going to read. I'm going to learn. I'm going to work at some things, and then I'm going to be a better person for it. And I'll say this: as I learned the lessons, my life really did change. I became that better person. I became more secure. I became more confident, and so these things are not to hurt you, even though they feel like they are. They are not to destroy you. And if you'll work at them, and if you'll go through some processes, you're going to be a better person. You're going to, again, be more confident, more secure. Your worries are going to diminish, and you're going to find life a lot happier. But we'll talk about those. And as we go on, I'm going to give you that resource, the very book that I read, and you can look into it for yourself. But I hope this is encouraging to you. I hope that this can help you to have hope, and that you can take my word as one who's experienced these things. You will get over them. You'll get over these attacks. You'll deal with them, and you're going to come out, and I've already said, a better person. And whether you like it, believe this or not, you'll be glad that you went through these things. And I guess it's part of the principle that comes from the Bible, that in order, resurrection seems like a really great thing. The only thing is, before you can be resurrected, you have to die. And so these are the dying processes. But also there is that resurrection. And when you come out, you're going to be very happy. Okay, so we will get back with another video. We'll try to take this a step at a time. Hopefully that's been a blessing to you. And thank you so much for watching.